Imagine two neighbors who have been in a quiet standoff for years. One neighbor keeps a locked shed in the backyard, and everyone assumes they know exactly what's inside it and not outspend the other. Then one day, during a heated argument, the shed door swings open just for a second, and the other neighbor sees something they were never supposed to see. That is roughly what just happened between Iran and Israel. I am not a journalist. I am a teacher. My job is not to make you feel something. My job is to help you understand what is actually happening. And what is happening right now is structurally very interesting and structurally very predictable if you know where to look. Here is what nobody is telling you clearly. For years, the public conversation about Iran's military capability has focused on a narrow set of headlines: nuclear talks, sanctions, proxy groups. But underneath that surface conversation, there has been a much quieter story about missile and drone technology and how far it has actually advanced. That story rarely gets simplified for regular people, so let's fix that. To understand why this moment matters, you have to go back a few decades. After the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, Iran came out of that conflict with a hard lesson. They had discovered that they could not rely on getting advanced fighter jets or top-tier air power from anyone because of sanctions and isolation. So instead of trying to outbuild their rivals in the sky, they made a strategic bet. They decided to invest heavily in missiles and drones instead, because those are cheaper, harder to intercept in large numbers, and do not require decades of pilot training. That single decision, made out of necessity, shaped everything that followed. This is where a simple idea from strategy and economics becomes useful, something called asymmetric deterrence. Think of it like a smaller kid on a playground who cannot out-wrestle the bigger kid. So instead, they learn to throw a very fast, very accurate punch that makes the bigger kid think twice before starting anything. Iran could not match Israel's air force or its advanced missile defense systems plane for plane. So instead, they built large numbers of missiles and drones designed to overwhelm defenses through sheer volume and unpredictability rather than raw individual power. Recent exchanges between the two countries gave analysts a rare, real-world look at how this strategy performs, not in theory but in practice. When you watch how many interceptors are used to stop a much smaller number of incoming missiles and drones, you start to see the actual math behind modern air defense. As every intercept costs real money and real resources, while the attacking side often spends far less to launch each missile. That imbalance is not just a detail, it is the entire strategic logic of the conflict. Now let's look at the incentives on each side, because that is what actually predicts behavior, not emotions or rhetoric. Iran wants to demonstrate that it has a credible deterrent without triggering a war it cannot win outright. Its strategy is to reveal just enough capability to make any future attack on its territory extremely costly for the other side. This makes sense for Iran because deterrence only works if the threat is believable. Israel, on the other hand, wants to maintain a credible promise that it can intercept nearly everything aimed at its population centers, because that promise is central to public confidence and to its alliances. When any weapon system performs in a way that puts a dent in that confidence, even briefly, it creates a real strategic problem, regardless of how the broader battle turns out. So what does this structural logic suggest happens next? First, expect both sides to continue investing heavily in exactly the systems that were tested in this exchange, meaning more interceptors on one side and more missile and drone production on the other. Second, expect neither side to rush into a larger war right away, because both understand that a full-scale conflict carries risks that are extremely difficult to control once started. Third, Expect other countries in the region to quietly reassess their own defense purchases based on what they just watched happen in real time. Let's come back to where we started, the locked shed in the backyard. The door did not fly open because someone made a mistake. It opened because a real test occurred, and tests reveal truth whether anyone intended them to or not. Now you understand that what people saw was not some hidden secret weapon out of nowhere. It was the visible result of a strategy that was built patiently over decades, based on a simple idea that you do not need to be the strongest player if you can make the cost of confronting you too high to accept. Here is your homework. I want you to look up how much a single interceptor missile costs compared to the drones or missiles it is designed to stop. Once you see that number, why? So we'll understand why this kind of exchange is not just a military event. It is an economic one too. But here is the bigger question worth sitting with. If deterrence increasingly depends on cost and volume rather than raw technological superiority, what does that mean for how future conflicts will be fought, not just in this region, but anywhere in the world where one side